So last night while browsing the internet, my wife come across one of the coolest things I think I've seen yet in my woodworking journey. Now the best part about this project is all you guys are gonna need is about 10 inches of board. Now this is perfect for your scrap pile. You guys can go out and buy yourselves a big 8-foot board and you cut out of a bunch of these. And what makes it best is you can make out a couple of these and use them as stocking stuffers. So that means today we're gonna be building this cool little wine holder. Now, I've never seen one of these things until she showed it to me last night. She was browsing the internet. I don't know if she's on Pinterest or she's on Etsy or Facebook or wherever she saw it, but I decided to look these up after she showed it to me, and apparently these things sell like hotcakes. They sell from anywhere from 20, 30, 40, even up to $50 for one of these simple wine holders. And I was absolutely blown away by how easy this thing is to create. So to get started with this project, all you guys are gonna need is about 12 inches of material. For me, I'm gonna continue to chew on this 1x4 that I've had over there in the corner of the scrap pile that for a while now, but the one over there on the fancy table that I showed earlier, I made that out of a simple 2x4 that I trimmed down, trimmed the little edges off to make it nice and look fancy and, you know, kind of spruce it up. So let's get started by taking our board over here to the miter saw, and we're gonna put a 45-degree miter on the one end of the board. Now this is about a 2-3 foot board. I'm obviously not gonna use the whole thing. I'm just gonna cut it down after I put that first 45-degree miter on the end. So with my miter saw rotated to 45 degrees, let's go ahead and make this first cut. All right, so now that I got that 45-degree cut on the one side of the board, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna measure off this long side 12 inches down. Now, I'm not quite sure how this works exactly other than science, but the longer the board is, the heavier the bottle you're gonna need. So for the average size bottle, about 12 inches seemed to do the trick because that's what happened with that board over there on the fancy table. Now measuring off the long side of our board, I'm gonna measure out that 10-inch mark and we'll go ahead and get our cut. And now a little tip, as I've learned from doing all of these projects, I'm gonna actually take this line that I just marked and I'm actually gonna rotate it around to the edge of the board so that way when I make my 45-degree cut, I know exactly where I'm at. All I'm gonna do is just make another 45-degree cut parallel with this first cut, and that's it at the miter saw. And with our board all cut and ready to go, you guys should have something that looks like this. Again, two 45-degree cuts parallel with each other. And now we'll just go over to the fancy table, drill a hole, and we got ourselves a fancy wine holder. Now with our piece of wood back over here at the fancy workbench, I think I fibbed a little bit when I said all you're gonna need is a miter saw for this project. You will need a drill for the hole, and you will need a Forstner bit if you plan on using a drill. Now, if you guys don't happen to have a Forstner bit, you guys can go pick them up over at Harbor Freight or Lowe's or wherever for a relatively cheap price. They're not crazy expensive. I think I picked up this set over at Lowe's for like 20 or 30 bucks, and it comes with about 10 of them. But if you don't happen to have a Forstner bit and you don't have the money to go out and get them, that's no big deal. You guys can use some kind of jigsaw to kind of get in there. It just may be a little bit trickier to clean up the hole and, you know, get it done using one of these. But for me, I'm gonna use an 1 3/8 Forstner bit to drill my hole. So the hole location for these boards is fairly simple. It's just 6 inches up from the bottom and in the center of your board. So taking my 1 3/8 Forstner bit, I'm gonna clamp my board to the table and we'll get the hole drilled. Now with our hole all drilled in our board, let's go ahead and see how this thing fits up with the wine bottle. Would you believe that? Well, now that we know it works, let's go ahead and get this thing sanded down with some sandpaper, and we'll go ahead and hit it with a little bit of dark stain to kind of go with the dark elegance that my wife has here with her fancy wine. Now, this is the point at which you guys can kind of do something to make it your own, whether you round over the edges with maybe a round over bit or a sander or a grinder of any kind, maybe change up the way it looks, change up the shapes. I've seen so many pictures online of how people get creative with these things, and this, honestly, is just the beginning. All right, and now for the stain, I'm gonna be using this dark walnut that I've had laying around. I've used it on multiple other projects if you guys have seen those videos, and it turns out great, and I think it's gonna go great with this color wine. And just like that, we got ourselves some fancy little wine holders. Now, I will say that depending on what kind of board you use, whether it's a 2x4 or a 1x4, I do believe the hole position might vary just a little bit in like the length of the board. So it might take a little bit of experimenting depending on the size of the wine bottle that you have and the kind of board that you're going with. Now, this one is a 12-inch board, again, with the hole about 3 inches down, 45-degree miters, and it seems to work out great. This one, again, a 10-inch board with a hole 6 inches from the bottom, and it seems to work out even better. So again, you guys can experiment, do whatever you'd like, but it's a pretty simple project. I didn't honestly expect it to be this easy. So I think that's gonna wrap it up for this video. If you guys enjoyed this kind of content, you know what to do. Hit the like, share, notification bell, all that good stuff. Again, I'm still a relatively new woodworker, and this is a newer channel. And again, I don't have all the big fancy tools. I just have a practical shop here in my own garage. So if you don't mind supporting it, hit the sub button. I really would appreciate it. But until next time, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Happy building, and God bless.